Hello friends, and welcome back to the channel. So today I'm going to be examining a question that's come up in my stream many times. Who currently has the best slow debuff in the game? So slow was first introduced in early 2019 with the reworks to both SheHulk and SpiderGwen. In the nearly 2 years since, this ability has increased significantly in value, yet there are still relatively few champions who possess it. So I examined the 6 champions who can slow an opponent and scored their specific ability in several categories. First, how many types of effects does it counter? Second, the duration of the debuff, both by default and the maximum possible for the character without factoring in synergies. Third, how many champions the debuff will not work on due to class disadvantage. And fourth, practicality. So this is a bit more nebulous, but I wanted to consider things like, does a champion need max sig to make their slow most effective? Does a champion's slow require consistent access to special attacks? And does a champion's slow limit their overall damage output? You may be aware that there is actually a 7th champion in the game right now who can apply slow, and that is Storm Pyramid X. However, I kinda disqualified her from this competition because although she can technically apply slow, it's only for the duration of her special 1 and does not have the same level of practical usage as other champions' abilities do. Sorry. The final thing I want to say before we get started is that context is important here. Before you fill my comments section with, "How dare you disrespect my favorite champion," remember that this evaluation is only about slow and is absolutely not intended to be taken as an overall comparison of one character versus another. Okay, let's get started. Coming in at 6th place is DragonMan, and if you just said to yourself, "Wait, DragonMan has slow?" then congratulations, you are just as clueless as I was before I started looking into this. DragonMan's slow has the shortest duration among our competitors by far, coming in at just 8 seconds with no way to lengthen it. It's applied via the special 1, and although he has some natural power gain to help enable you to spam it, limiting your usage of other special attacks does hamper his overall damage output quite a bit. He also loses a few points for being in the Mystic class, which means he's ineffective against popular evade champions like SpiderMan and unstoppable champs like Thing. At 5th place, we have the only other Mystic champion in our competition, and that is Sorcerer Supreme. She also loses some points for not being able to handle the Science class, but thanks to her ability to repeatedly spam special attacks, she can achieve near permanent uptime of her slow debuff if you set up her runes properly. Of course, being heavily reliant on specials means that in power lock or power drain situations, she is robbed of most of her effectiveness. Needing to dedicate a rune to slow also decreases her maximum damage potential. At 4th place, we have Red Guardian. Red Guardian's slow is 12 seconds by default, but can be increased to 15.6 seconds if you can get him to max sig. Now, similarly to DragonMan, Red Guardian needs to fire his special 1 to apply the slow, but only needs to do so once, as heavy attacks will refresh its duration from then on. A slowed opponent grants Red Guardian increased combat power rate, enabling him to quickly get to his damage rotation. Red Guardian surprisingly loses some points because he's a Science champ, and this is because the skill class actually has more evade champions than in any other class, coming in with 9. In addition, there are 5 skill champions who can go unstoppable, which means that Red Guardian's slow is ineffective against roughly 8% of all champions in the game. Coming in at 3rd place on the podium, but 1st place in your heart, is SheHulk. SheHulk's slow duration is also 12 seconds by default, and she does not have a way to increase it. She's a Science champion and thus suffers the same disadvantage that Red Guardian does, but where she gains a lot of ground over him is that her slow does not require special attacks to either apply or refresh. In situations where you are power locked or on nodes like Plagued Mind, SheHulk can still get phenomenal uptime on slow. She doesn't need to be awakened, and her overall damage output is in no way limited by needing to throw lots of heavy attacks. In fact, most would argue that weaving in heavies is in fact the correct way to play her. There is a bit of a skill cap to this, however, because you need to have a solid understanding of the spacing during fights in order to refresh those debuffs in time. Our runner-up today is SpiderGwen, and you're probably sitting there thinking, are you kidding me? Her slow is the same as SheHulk's, and you would be almost correct. SpiderGwen's slow debuff lasts 15 seconds by default, which is the highest default duration among all of these champions, and a full 25% longer than SheHulk's. Though she definitely does not need the dupe for the purposes of slow, at max sig you can get an additional 3 seconds tacked onto that duration, bringing it up to a total of 18 seconds. Now this may not seem like a big deal, but in fights where the AI is being a bit too passive, having that extra cushion really does help. Similar to SheHulk, Gwen applies slow via heavy, and it does not affect her optimum damage rotation. So without further ado, it's time to crown our slow champion, and you've already probably guessed it, Stealth Suit Spider-Man. So Stealthy's slow debuff is unique in the game because not only does it counter evade and unstoppable, it also fully counters miss as well. Its default duration is 12 seconds, which is pretty standard, but can be increased to a whopping 30 seconds with his special 2. Moreover, only one mutant champ can evade, and only 3 have unstoppable, which makes Stealthy's slow the most broadly effective version in the game. Stealthy does not require the dupe, and can achieve near permanent uptime without a significant skill requirement. Now, it's not all good. Similarly to other champs in this list, Stealthy's slow becomes very gimped in situations where he's unable to gain a lot of power consistently. You'll have a limited number of refreshes on slow without access to your special 2 or special 3. Though his damage is still excellent, you definitely do lose a good amount of critical damage choosing slow rather than vulnerability via his pre-fight ability. So there you have it, a look at the slowest slowers in the game. Do you agree? Disagree? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Don't forget to click that like button for me and subscribe if you like what you see. And as always, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you again next time.